question. I haven't read your book, The Way of Powerlessness. I find 12 Steps of Recovery. Does that refer to recovery from addiction?
Mm-hmm. It does. Are you familiar with the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous?
Yes.
So it is a discussion of the relationship between the essential pointers of both the 12 steps and these non-dual teachings and how they relate one to the other.
And it's has to do with surrendering to a higher power, your consciousness.
Well, the first step of the 12 steps is about powerlessness. And it is about powerlessness first over something that's generally, for people who are introduced to the 12 steps, it's usually because there is some substance or condition in their life that has brought them to a point of some kind of surrender. Saying, I'm screwed here. I can't do it. I can't manage this thing. And whether it's alcohol or drugs or food or sex or relationships or, gambling or whatever, the list is endless. Whatever it is not important. The fact is that something has provided a crack in that sense that I can handle this. I'm in control here. And so that's the point where there is an opportunity for looking more deeply into what it is that makes us do what we do. What's actually perhaps in charge here? What's actually running the show? Where is the power in life? And so the first step is that you're powerless over this one thing, and then the second part of that first step is that your life is not manageable by you, which everybody pays lip service to so they can get on with the show. But my suggestion is that the next 10 steps are very much about, and to the first half of the 12th step is very much about coming to a point of recognizing the truth of the first step, where you really, really get that your life is unmanageable by you. Not just some of it, like, period.
Right.
So that's how this, and which is basically what the teaching is, this living teaching of Advaita is pointing to the same exact thing, just through different language and different kinds of pointers.
So then would you say that it seems that everyone has some sort of a weakness, right? Or something that, whether it's alcohol or drugs or a relationship or sex addiction or whatever it is, and then there's that illusion that it's just this one thing here, but everything else I really manage. But so then would you say that the addiction is a teacher in a sense. It's just that one thing that's going to come and show us the essence of powerlessness. That
it is perhaps the opening of the door.
mm-hmm.
That's, to me, that's all it is.
Yeah.
That if you have attended 12-step meetings then and listened, then you certainly know that lots of people continue to believe that it's up to you to do, to make it happen. You know, and despite what's actually written in the book and in the steps, it's you know, it's up to me. I have to do it. You know, I make it happen, and you know, my character defects, I have to work on them. I have to make, you know, I have to make the changes. It's up to me. You know, that's the consciousness that is prevalent not only in those meetings, but in the society at large. I mean, that's the general consciousness. What it is that enables someone to begin to see through that into the proposition that our lives are unmanageable by us.
To what extent?
100% is where is the spiritual awakening that one gets as a result of the steps or as a result of the insights that may come in another way. It is an all or nothing proposition. There is no partial powerlessness. You either are or you're not. You see. And the proposition that I can control some things, but I can't control others, is a specious kind of thinking. It's not doesn't make any sense when you get down to it. The question then becomes, why not? What is it that enables you to control some things and not other things? There must be some other power that is determining whether or not you do something. And including exercising your power. Because clearly sometimes you've got power to do all kinds of things. And you are empowered to, starting with your breathing. You're empowered to breathe. You're empowered to think. You're empowered to feel. You're empowered to act in a variety of ways. But sometimes that power is withdrawn. And you can't act. You're physically debilitated, you're sick, you can't get out of bed, you can't act. You can't do what you want to do. The power to do that is withdrawn from you. And the recognition that inherently we are powerless, inherently powerless, that the powers that we have are given to us or not, is all that this teaching is pointing to. And ultimately, I believe what these 12 steps are pointing to.
Ultimately?
What the 12 steps are pointing to. And the language is very different. The 12 steps are written in the Christian language of, a bunch of men in the 40s who the way they talked was very different. And if you go, so that scripture, of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is a scripture, is written in the language of the times and uses examples of the language of the time. But just in the same way that the Advaita scriptures are of a culture and a language that is reflective of where they were written down. But what underlies both is the same thing. And that's what I was talking about in that book.
Now, is there, does the teaching point at some salvation that would come from surrendering to and accepting the powerlessness, or?
Well, yes. I mean, the salvation is the relief from suffering that comes from surrendering. But
Or accepting the powerlessness, right?
We call it accepting what is.
Yes.
Accepting what is. But it isn't that it comes from you doing that. The acceptance of what is that. It's not a cause and effect relationship. It is, we can call it a recognition of what is. And even that puts it back into time. And you have a subtle sense that this is causing this. But it's really deeper than that. And the ultimate understanding is not in terms of cause and effect. It is not you being saved by this. It is a recognition at the most fundamental kind of level of what is.
So would you say that accepting what happens, circumstances, feelings, thoughts, everything, if you're in acceptance of it, then you're not suffering?
It gets very tricky very fast, because when you're talking about accepting this or accepting that, it's not really what we're talking about.
Okay.
We're talking about the acceptance of what is, which is total, and it includes your not accepting that and not accepting that. You're saying, I don't like that. I don't want that. It's not okay with me. It's not okay. So the acceptance of what is includes the non-acceptance.
Right, because that's what is, the non-acceptance.
If there is non-acceptance, then yes,
right.
That is part of what is.
Right. So, yeah, had a whole string of things in the past 2 days that I didn't like, and I'm just noticing, like, and then the question.
That's called a bad couple of days.
A bad couple of days, right? Right.
Yes, I'm sorry you had a bad couple.
And then there's just all this dialogue in my head, like, I should be doing more. I should be more effective.
Well, that's the key word is should,
right.
And
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that brings the suffering.
Right.
Okay. So you're having a bad day, which is painful, and then the suffering comes from the involvement that I should have done this, and I shouldn't have done this, and if I was more spiritual and more accepting and more of this or more of that, then none of this would be happening, blah, 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 and that's the suffering.
And just, in general, this long list of things that I think are wrong.
Yes.
With life and other people, mostly.
Yeah.
So that's not really acceptance of what is. I mean, it's like, is that...
That's part of what is. Your long list of things that you don't like is part of what is. Yes. And not liking something tends to be painful, and you make the observation, well, yeah, if I did not like them, then I wouldn't be experiencing discomfort associated with them. Very true, but so what? The fact is that everybody likes some things and doesn't like other things. Everybody. That's life.
It gets really tricky when we are trying to exercise acceptance and we go into I should accept the unacceptance, because then there's a should right there also.
No, the first difficulty is in, quote, practicing acceptance. What we're talking about here is pointing to what is, which may include practicing acceptance, but that's not what we're talking about as acceptance of what is. What acceptance of what is total. It's not anything that is conditional. Anything that is accepting this or not accepting that falls under the umbrella of what is. And those things come and go.
Right.
The acceptance of what is total. It's not subject, object. There's nothing to practice. It simply is. So in that sense, the term acceptance throws you off because you think, aha, I accept some things, I don't accept other things. Accept what is means that I am accepting everything that is. But it isn't you accepting, it's accepting acceptance without an acceptor. There's no one accepting or not accepting.
Okay.
In the acceptance of what is, the one who accepts and not accepts and doesn't accept is part of what is.
So, in my business, there's a lot of like mentoring and training and setting goals and mindset and like working with your unconscious belief system that's always in lack, that type of thing. And to some degree, it seems like if you think the world is a bad, scary place and nothing good ever happens to you, that's the experience that you have. And so I know there's like no one singular cause, but it does seem like if you want to get sober, go to AA. If you want to have a thriving business, hire a coach, like a business coach, or like it seems like there's certain things that would contribute to maybe having more of what you want potentially.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yes.
Okay.
No, I mean, of course, maybe.
Right. So like if
You want to get stronger? Go to the gym.
Right.
Except some people go to the gym, they overdo it.
Right.
First day out, irreparably damage their body and in a way that can't be repaired. First day, going to the gym. For them, going to the gym has ruined their health. Now, which is not to say, oh, don't go to the gym, you could ruin your health. But going to the gym doesn't mean you're going to be healthy.
Right. Some people buy a house and it goes up in value and they make $1 million. Some people buy a house and it goes down in value and they lose everything.
That is correct.
Right. So it's not that making an investment.
Some people go to doctors and are healed, and others are killed. So, I mean, there are certainly, so now you're left with looking at patterns of things and identifying as best you can a pattern, and then thinking, okay, well, you know, if this is kind of the way things work, then maybe that's what would be a good thing to do in deciding, you know, what to do next. That's one approach that people use. Other people roll the dice. I'm not sure that there's necessarily a strong correlation between success by using, you know, one approach versus success by using another approach, depending on what you mean by success. So, no singular causes. We truly don't know what will happen next, and yet, in order for us as human beings, we identify patterns of things.
Right.
That's what we do. And then we base certain decisions on the patterns we've identified. And we can call this our programming. But we have a certain inherent nature. We're born with certain qualities and characteristics and capabilities, a certain IQ, a certain emotional intelligence. Different, everybody. And then it's combined with our experience. That which we've seen, that the patterns that have come into our lives. And those things combine to make us decide things. And that's a dynamic process. It's changing all the time. And it's changing by what your experiences are. So the programming is not fixed. The programming is in constant flux. And depending on, what you've heard here tonight has changed you in some way. For the better or for the worse, who knows? You make that evaluation afterwards, but you're changed by your experience. And then as you look into it, you recognize, well, you're here because of vast forces. Lots of things had to happen in order for you to get here and be here. And to know that here was here. And all that stuff, all these things had to happen for this to happen. And then you begin to recognize that this is all this happening is part of a much bigger picture than just what I'm deciding to do or I think I should do or what my particular programming is. And it's really much bigger than us. We want to try and make it smaller and focus and bring it back to us and say, okay, what do I need to do to get what I want and to get my desired result and to have a more beneficial, outcome to things, which is a very natural desire. And so you shrink the question down as much as you can and identify, you know, these relationships. Okay, if I do this, then this is more likely to happen. As reasonable a thing to do as any. But when you get into the bigger picture and you expand your awareness, you begin to recognize that all of that is all part of a vastly bigger function. A what-isness that is producing everything. And in that, it takes some of the pressure off. You know, that feeling, I've got to do it. I've got to stop screwing up. I've got to, you know, change myself and change my attitude because my attitude is projecting into the negative, and if I don't get this negative out of myself, then the future is going to be negative, and my present is going to be negative, and everything is going to be negative, so I got to get rid of the negative, you know, and it's up to me. That's the, you know, that sense is excruciating. That's suffering. In the sense that it's up to me. The perspective that is available here, that's being pointed out here, is that what you do is part of a vastly bigger system.
But wouldn't you agree, say that it would be wise to learn how to work in cooperation with that system without trying to take too much like ownership of, or too much responsibility, or to put too much pressure on?
Yeah, if you can. So the question comes back to, what is it that enables you to do that or not?
Well, I'm also wondering what inspires you to want that.
Yes, that too.
I feel like since I'm inspired, it's like a calling. It's like an intuitive calling, as though that entire universe or consciousness or whatever, the system, is sort of like nudging me, calling me. And I'm just trying to find all the possible ways to respond and, you know, to explore this vehicle that is me, that is my body, that is my mind, that is my senses, and to sort at the same time to also surrender to that and see, like, keep exploring ways to cooperate and collaborate with that, basically.
Yeah, I believe that that's what's happening for you. So what we're looking at is, how is this happening for you? I mean, you don't have to talk to that many other people to recognize that most people are not in that consciousness. They're not looking at that stuff. But they're looking to get like a better job, a better car, a better mate, and, you know, a nicer place to live, and some more money in the bank. You know, really, they're not looking to recognize their place in the universe and how to, you know, move with what is and cooperate, and, you know, it's not like what they're into. How is it that you're drawn to that?
Well, I had a feeling that everyone is, or like a lot more.
Really, you got to get out a lot more. Outside of a very narrow circle that you're, if everybody you know is into that, you got to get into like the world. Because you know, talk to the mechanic, go down to the garage, go, you know, talk to the supermarket checker, and the butcher in the butcher shop. and the guy who's washing the windows, and say what's going on? What are you interested in? What's meaningful for you? It's not what you're talking about.
At the same time, it's very grounding for me to talk to, all this. Very grounding. So it brings me back to reality a little bit.
Okay. Because their consciousness and your consciousness are part of the same reality, even though they're vastly different. So yes, you become grounded in the source that is expressing in as each of you. But when you make the mistake of saying that my interests and the way I look at things is how everybody does, then you have a somewhat skewed view of things.
I mean, maybe it's because I hang out in places like this.
That's right. So if this is your neighborhood, then the people in your neighborhood are going to think a certain way and talk a certain way, and that's all very true. And there's comfort in being among your people, and those are your people in a way. But it can be incredibly grounding and expanding, ultimately, to get beyond that into a bigger context and recognize that context. So.
It can be expansive, is that what you said?
I don't know, I don't listen to myself.
So, in my experiences is when I get around people that are speaking a different language, how I might describe it, I hate it. I don't feel connected to them, which brings up a lot of fear for me, and like anger and frustration and like, why are they so XYZ? And yeah, I mean, I just feel generally not an acceptance about all of it. Like, I mean, not to say that like it's all bad, because I recognize lots of good things, but the stuff I don't like is loud. The disconnected part, the unconsciousness, and just feeling different. And like, I'm really pissed off at the like unfair allocation of shit.
Yeah.
Like, why do so many really bad people have so much like power and resource?
So you want it to be fair.
Yes, much more fair.
Are you willing to give up 90% of what you have in terms of material wealth, in terms of health, access to health, in terms of being able to educate your children? Are you willing to give up 90% of that for it to be fair, so that everybody gets the same?
Well, I didn't say everybody should get the same. I just don't think
Well,
that there should be.
If one's getting more than the other, then it's not fair. So the question is, are you willing to give up 90%? Because you're in the 10% tile, as you are, as you sit here. You've got the access to the education, to the health, to the money that most of the rest of the world does not. But in order for it to be like distributed all out, you don't get it. You don't get to have what you have. So when they come to take away your kids' stuff, and you know, and take away their education and take away their opportunities, you may have a different feeling about that.
Yeah, my friend wrote a book about stopping complaining.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically like stop complaining completely, 100% stop complaining. Like, because when you're complaining, you're being in victim consciousness and you're perpetuating this lack, and it sounds really good in theory to stop complaining and to be
If you can.
right.
If you can, definitely stop complaining. Be grateful.
Be grateful.
If you can.
Right.
But what we're concerned with here is what makes this as it is, It can all change tomorrow. I mean, I don't know how it's going to be next, but we're concerned with this is how it is. This is how you are.
Right.
How is it that you are the way you are? How? I mean, it's not for lack of information that, well, if you're grateful, you're happier. You know that. This is not news. You've known this for 30 years almost. How do you? So you've got that information. How is it that you're not grateful all the time? It benefits you. It really does. You know that.
Right. I don't always have the power to remember that.
Exactly. So how is it that sometimes you are given that power and other times you're not? That's what we're looking at. And having somebody write a book and tell you this is how you should be, and do this and do that, great. I'm on board.
Right.
If you can give me a foolproof way for me to be in that consciousness 100% of the time, I'm there. But no one I have ever met has been able to provide that. Say, if you do this, you'll get this. Say, I got that. Absolutely. The problem is the if. How is it that, because sometimes I can do it and sometimes I can't.
Right.
Yeah, okay, I believe you. If I do that, I'll get this. But how do I do that? Where's the power come from to do that? Am I supposed to generate it myself? If I could, I would have already. I'm not stupid. So what's going on here? How is it I am this way today? That's the question.
You know, when I was just flashing on something in my own life. This was many years ago. I was working, and I was at some school event. I think it was a parent talking to me, and this man, he decided that I would be happier or better off if I bought a house instead of living in an apartment. He told me that. He said, you know, I should buy a house. And I said, yeah, I thought about that, and I really like my apartment, and I don't have to repair things, and I like it the way it is. And he said, and he started giving me all the reasons why I should buy a house. And I don't know where he got this idea, but he kept this up, and I was trying to explain it. It's a good idea, but right now I like what I have. And he started again. Started to tell me all the reasons why I should have a house. So I finally said to him, you know, I think you're right. I'm going to look for a house tomorrow. I didn't want to talk about it anymore. So that was...
Tends to be the best way to get people to shut up is to agree with them.
It's a great idea. That's a great idea. I don't know what he's thinking or where it came from. I have no idea.
It would have been funny if he was a real estate agent then. He said, I'm going to buy a house tomorrow.
I have no idea. It just came out of nowhere.
I think I get what you're saying. It's rather than trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do and how am I supposed to create satisfaction for myself and how am I supposed to connect with this force and all the little personal I things, it's more like this inquiry into like what's the animating life force that's doing everything? What is that? That's the question that kind of keeps that bigger, broader perspective.
Can.
It can. Mm-hmm. That's something you said a couple days ago, like it's about noticing what's happening rather than trying to make stuff happen. You may not have said noticing. Anyways.
Anyway.
Ultimately, it seems like it's all about control. It's all about a desire to be in control. Feel in control, know what's coming, know that you know, you can influence things, you can influence your life. It just comes down to that. A lot of it. So, and then there's the irony. It's almost like a lesson from almost like there's a missing piece or something somewhere down the line, you know, like there's a disconnect big time. You know, when we talk about humanity, collective, like humanity at large, and how disconnected we all are from this consciousness, from going about things in the right way, you know, like we should all be, and I know I'm using should, but it seems that it would make more sense if we were in concert with this consciousness, more in concert and harmony, right? And that it's like there's so much disharmony between the ego and how the individual goes about their own lives and the consciousness. And then...
So the name of this teaching is Advaita.
Yeah.
And Advaita means not two. And it's pointing to the fact that this consciousness and the ego are not two.
Not two?
Not two.
As in one, two. Oh. Oh man. And so then how is conflict possible? How is conflict? We all experience so much conflict within ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's such a paradox. Like if
It is a paradox. It is a paradox.
if they're not two,
Right.
if they're one.
No, I didn't say,
So
no,
that's
it's not
right.
called oneness.
Okay. Okay. So they're just not two.
Yeah. So if they're not two, then what are they? That's really the question. Why didn't they call it oneness?
Yeah.
You know, right? I mean, it seems like not two is a long way to go to say oneness, but they were smarter than that. They said not two for a very good reason. They're pointing at something much more profound than this notion that you have of the oneness as this, you know, harmonious, good thing that, you know, and that in which conflict is impossible. This not two is big enough and to include disharmony. The not two is a container for the most beautiful and the most horrific, for the most selfish and the most selfless, is this not two.
And in your human experience, you may still get really pissed off and frustrated and angry and scream and stuff.
If you're that kind of human, then you will, yes.
Right.
I mean, there are humans that don't do that. And we have a shorthand name for those people. They're called saints. Because they behave in a way that everybody thinks is like perfect. They don't have certain characteristics which are considered to be negative. So they just don't have them. They don't react that way. They're constructed so that they don't do that. And you go, I want to be like them. You know, that's the, And so we call those saints, and then the idea is you measure your behavior against that, and of course come up short, and then the people who are in charge of the scale have you right where they want you, because now they've got the means for you to, get free of your sins and clean up your act to be more saintly, or that you will be reborn in a more saintly way, or whatever their sales pitch is. Well, what we're looking at here is like, what is it that makes people saints or sinners? What's responsible for that? Do people come out and say, I'm going to be a saint? I mean, and lots of people do, but very few are. How is it that of the 100 people that says, I'm going to behave beautifully, I'm not going to get angry, I'm going to be magnanimous and generous and kind and loving all the time, because I see that that's beneficial for me. Of the 100 or 1,000 that say I'm going to do that, like one does. How is it that one does and the other 999 don't? What's going on here? That's what we're looking at. What's responsible for how you are?
How do you factor in the soul's intentions? There's.
I don't know what that means.
So that we have a soul, and then when we.
I don't know what that is.
So you don't.
I don't know what it is. You say we've got it. What is it? I don't know.
Well, it's the consciousness that basically remains alive, right? Once the body dies, and there's, as I see, there's a field of consciousness that.
But what is the body if it isn't consciousness? Like what is the body then? How is it different from this consciousness?
So the body can die, but that consciousness doesn't. So that's the difference. The body.
Yes, but what is the body?
Mm-hmm. It's considered the subconscious mind. I say
it starts getting pretty funky pretty quick when you start getting into it, because if the consciousness is everything,
mm-hmm.
I mean that's kind of what, if we're starting with that proposition that God or consciousness or totality is everything, then the body, the individual body, has to be that, because that's all there is. So yes, the way we can talk about it is that the body is a wave of the ocean, and all there is ocean. The body is a wave. All the objects are waves. And when that particular wave is finished, that wave is gone. True.
Mm-hmm.
So when we recognize what we are, then the question of soul starts to get pretty, I don't get it, personally.
Mm-hmm.
Because the generally what's talked about as soul is some kind of individual quality. that makes you across time and space. For, you know, there's something that transcends all that which is you, but that you is differentiated from other yous.
I'm trying to wrap my mind around it myself, and you know, because there's like trying to combine different theories, I guess, and I don't know. I see
that's why I just asked.
Yeah.
Like when you said, what about the soul's intention or whatever, the thrust of this teaching is not to really contradict any of the other teachings. But when you're bringing a concept from another structure, then it's problematic, because that concept is not consistent with what this teaching is pointing at, which is the not-to-ness, the unity, the inherent underlying oneness of everything.
I know, and I mean, I also believe at the same time that, in essence, the truth of every system, so if there's any truth at unity, then they should all, we should be able to sort of, you know, see them all overlap, or, you know, for instance, with the souls, like, maybe we just don't have the clear vision of how they play out within the consciousness, but I also don't see the consciousness being uniform and consistent, like, as it expresses itself in so many ways and in so many forms and through so many people. So all those differences can be, you know, perhaps labeled, let's put it that way.
Yes, of course
So
it
it can
can.
be labeled, and
Absolutely.
in ways that then it makes sense for us to look at it and to accept the label and to see what the label does and how it plays out within the other system, or
But all we're doing in this teaching, this teaching is not a system. So it's not a system that says that doesn't exist or that does exist, or this particular teaching is only a collection of questions to shine the light on some of your ideas and beliefs, and to see how they may be limiting your understanding of what is.
yeah,
That's
I get that.
that's all. And that the only thing that this teaching is concerned with is your recognizing what is. And it doesn't, but the teaching doesn't say what is, what it looks like. So there's no way to measure whether you've seen it correctly, or, you know, you're off, you know, well, she's seen it, but he hasn't seen it. Because there's nothing laid out as that which is to be seen. And yet the teaching is only concerned with your seeing the truth.
Like, for example, I just want to say this.
Oh,
I was able to connect with my grandmother who passed on.
yes.
And so, can we label that part of consciousness that, you know, I was able to connect with, that held her energy and spoke like the way she did, as her soul? So in that sense, I'm trying to point or figure out, okay, so that if she was able to come through as so distinctly, just the way she, you know, she was, as her energy, and she was not just lost or dissolved within that consciousness.
So there was an essence of her after she died. So that's where my question came from with, you know, souls, and maybe there is something that is unique, sort of, that can be also part of the consciousness, not necessarily separate, but, you know, enmeshed with that larger consciousness.
But everything is. That's the point.
Right.
And your ability to connect with a particular aspect of consciousness is dependent on you. I haven't talked to your grandmother. Probably nobody else in this room has. So, once again, this is very much dependent upon you. And what is it about you that enables you to resonate with that aspect of the totality of which your grandmother has always been part, such that you have an experience of her? It's your experience. You have an experience of her, and I believe that you do. So, these are the questions, which we're probably not going to come up with any concrete explanations of tonight. But the point of the teaching is always that there's nothing lost, that every bit of what your grandmother was remains part of what is. But not in the form of your grandmother. That form is gone. In the same way that the wave is gone. Everything that the wave was remains part of the ocean. Everything. Nothing is lost. So your ability to recognize, to experience a part of that totality of what is dependent on you.